Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to the Resilience Resourcing Podcast. This is a connection space where badass women share their real on their way to resilience. Each week, I have the pleasure of spotlighting women dominating in a diverse landscape of fields ranging from performance neurotraining to film and all in between. You will get to know the unique qualities these women each carry and how connecting with these empowering women's stories bring about camaraderie and in turn empower you towards your unique dreams and goals. So today I get the opportunity to introduce Joelle Kantor, and we actually met through a mutual friend, and she has an incredible story, and she's also an author. So we're just going to get started. I'm going to get to know the story that basically had you writing your story and just the journey that you've been on. She's overcome a lot of traumatic brain injury and has kind of a journey of self-discovery through all of that. And so excited to have you with us, Joelle. And I just can't wait to learn about your book before I read it, because I am so excited to read it soon. So first, you, from what I've understood, you had a traumatic brain injury, and that kind of started your journey with your book. And so can you kind of tell us a little bit about how that TBI journey began? What happened?
Absolutely. And let me just say thank you so much, Holly, for having me on your podcast. This is my first podcast sharing my story, so I'm really excited to be here and be able to get my story out there.
I'm so happy that you're part of it. It's just, I'm so excited to get this story out for everyone, so everyone else that is part of the podcast community, subscribers, can know about your book and about all your books and everything you've done. So I'm just excited to know more about your story.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to start off with a quote. Okay. I love quotes. I have a lot of quotes throughout my book, but here's a quote to kind of introduce how and why I think I went through what I went through. And it's an anonymous quote. I don't know who wrote this, but it says, "You won't miss a sign from the universe. It will keep getting louder and louder until you get it." And I feel like that is exactly what happened to me. My book is called My Wake Up Fall: How Landing on My Face Taught Me How to Stand on My Feet. And I'll tell you about the situation and like the things that happened, but there was a big moment where I felt like the universe was like, you know, I had 4 head injuries, but then I've had other things happen in my life. And I feel like, not that we're getting punished, but the universe is saying, hey, listen up, you know? And this one was like, okay, now we have your full undivided attention and we're, you know, it's time to listen. And it was like, I was at this place where it was like, okay, I surrender. What do I need to know? What am I missing out on? What am I not, you know, acknowledging in my life? And that took me down a whole path of self-discovery and really getting to know myself, which was definitely needed in my life. So be careful what you all wish for and how you wish for it.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, your quote, I've heard that said, not specifically as you said it in the quote, but I've heard that said many times, that the universe or God will always, those lessons will keep coming back until you learn them. Like that opportunity will keep coming back until you learn.
I believe it. I really believe it. Yeah. And it really has made me more aware now on the other side of this, to not ignore those signs or messages or things as they come up. But so yes, I did have 4 head injuries as an adult. For me, they were based around really sports and boating situations. And the last one, I was literally just jogging. But so we were on 2 co-ed teams, and the first one I was on a softball league, and I had always wanted to play first. But someone else had that position and she was out of town. So we were at a practice one day and I was on first. I'm a lefty, so I was super excited. Got my position, but I wasn't paying attention. Speaking of paying attention, I wasn't paying attention. The ball was being tossed around the field and someone yelled my name, told me to look at second. I turned my head, my arms out, but it was too late and the ball just smacked me in the eye. Now this was a month or so after I got married. So in a humorous way, we were all like, well, at least you didn't have a black eye at your wedding, right?
For the wedding, yeah,
But
wow.
but I fell to the ground, and when people came over to like check on me, I could tell by their facial expressions it wasn't good. And it was one of those things where like, oh yeah, you're okay, you're okay. And I'm like, I could tell by the way they looked at me, it was not okay. And so I went to the ER, I had to get stitches, had a nice big shiner.
Gosh,
And
on your eyeball, like
on my
right.
eyeball. So just like I actually have some scar tissue right here. So you don't see the scar anymore. It healed nicely. It was in my 20s,
Yeah.
but I do have some scar tissue here, and just as a good memory for me to remember to stay focused, stay aware, right? That one didn't like physically do a lot to me, but clearly it didn't wake me up, right? So then another one happened. And so we were on a friend's boat and he likes to get a little crazy. I'm on the inner tube and he hits a wave. I go flying up and then just smacked back down onto, I don't honestly know if I smacked my head onto the inner tube or the water or whatever it was, but I got out of the boat. My nose was bleeding. My right ear was like numb, like I couldn't really hear out of it for a short time. And then 2 days later, I had the vertigo where the world's spinning. So there's vertigo where you're spinning and vertigo where the world's spinning. That one to me is way worse. You can't have your eyes open. So I ended up in bed for 6 weeks, eyes closed. And that would have been a good time to listen to the urinal burst, but apparently I didn't. Anyways, I had no idea what was in that. Was super challenging for me. I had little kids, so I had to get help. And that was tough because your eyes closed for 6 weeks and not being able to function like you do.
Yeah, 6 weeks that's quite a long time to have to keep your eyes closed and deal. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine.
Went to do, CAT scans and, I would just have to have people guide me to the car and guide me into the buildings. And because
My gosh.
anytime, and sometimes I'd test it, I'd kind of peek my eyes open to see if it was any better, and it wasn't. And so that was a really challenging time. And
That sounds like torture, honestly.
it was torture. It was, but I used those words on the last head injury a lot. Because that one was like, it was brutal in its own way of just like being motion, the world being motiony. I didn't yet have the symptoms that I got for the last one. The third one was also a co-ed soccer league, and this big burly guy just came flying right through me, dropped me like a pancake, smacked my head on the ground, took me a little bit to get up, dizzy, all of that stuff. And then the final one was just me going out on a jog one day. The sidewalk was raised a little bit and I was just in a funk. I just wasn't in a really happy place. I wasn't paying attention. My toe hit that part of the sidewalk and I just went down hard and fast, whiplashed my neck. And after that, I spiraled down this really dark hole that lasted for 3 years. Wow. And, it took me to these horrible places that symptoms that I can't even to this day, really understand or believe that our bodies can do that, and and so I would use words like that, torturous, all of those kinds of words, I was very desperate for it to stop. I remember, like, I think in my book, even I describe, I'm trying to find words to try to describe to people because you really want people to understand what you're feeling. Because on the outside, you look fine. That's a problem with brain injuries. You look just fine. And it's easy to be like, oh, you're just depressed or you're just this or that. And it's like, if only you could know the fire that's going on inside me. And so I remember I'd use a analogy of if you had like a shock collar on your neck and it was turned to the highest level and you're just like, turn it off quickly, like hurry and turn this off, like I can't even handle it.
That I've had that before. In fact, the way you just described that was like like obviously you're a writer because you articulated that so well. And I think that I've had the same thing where you are dealing with a symptom that's in your head and you can't even come up with the words. Sometimes brain injuries, you have word recall issues already, but
Right.
like not being able to come up with those words so that people understand what you're going through makes you almost feel trapped in your body and like nobody understands.
100%. And I would say that too. I'm in this prison, which is my own body.
Yeah.
And I feel stuck in here, and then, of course that messes with your whole mind and, just, yeah, it does turn into depression. It does turn into anxiety. It does turn into PTSD. It does turn into all of those things because you're in such a fragile, raw state and it's day after day. I mean, I cried all day, every day because of the pain and the discomfort and the frustration of wanting my life back. And I remember one of my sons said to me, Mom, where do all of your tears come from? It's like, how are you able to make so many tears? And
Oh, wow.
it's like, yeah, that is like a wise little thing for him to think about. But when I was in that situation, it was really in the first month or two, I was laying on the floor. I would mostly be by myself. My family was there and they were wonderful, but there was a lot of time where I was just by myself. I couldn't do anything. And in this particular moment, I was on the floor staring at the ceiling, my body's shaking, and I'm really searching for some higher being, some higher power. Like, I was raised in a Jewish family. I believe in God, but I also wasn't super religious. And now I was like so desperate that I was like, what do I need to know? Like, why is this happening? What's going on? And I literally I had heard in the past before how people like will say, oh, I was channeling this, or this certain thing just came to me, like whether it's your passion or it's your, whatever it might be for you. And I was like, that would be really cool, but I hadn't ever had anything like that happen. Well, that title came into my mind in that moment, and it was like, you need to write a book, and it's called My Wake Up Fall.
Wow.
And I was like,
That just gave
okay,
me goosebumps. I'm not
you
even
know,
kidding you.
I'm like,
Wow.
okay, I'll do it. And I remember like 6 months in, a year in, I'm like, okay, you told me what I need to do. Like, just get me better and I'll do it. I promise I'll do it. I'll do anything. And little did I know I had to go, 3 years like this, day in and day out. But it brought me into this place of self-discovery and really getting to know the true me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people go through that kind of stuff where, when we're little, we're trying to fit in and make our friends at school and who's the cool one and who's accepted. And, do you like the same things that everyone else likes? And I think I got really caught up in that too, because there was this part of me, I'm a very empathic person, people pleaser, or I was. And I just, I love people and I want people to love me, and I love connection. And I think I was definitely trying too hard, and I wasn't getting to know me. I was trying too hard to please everyone around me, thinking that that's how I would then be accepted. I would then be good enough. I would then be, worthy and all of that. And my lesson, along the way has been to really evaluate and recreate a healthy relationship with myself. And
I mean, that is spot on what so many people in the podcast through their own different adversities have come to that exact same, like the one with the girl recently who talked about trauma, religious trauma, and her whole story with that. It was the rediscovery of self and like getting away from disassociating from self. And I think it happens it happens in many different ways, like how people come to that place of like, wow, I've completely disassociated from myself to like people please or to like just because you're so focused on like others. I'm really empathetic too, and so I totally relate to what you're saying.
Right. And I think too, it's like anyone can put on a good face mask, whatever, when they're out in public, and we can then create in our minds these stories that they have it all together. And I know for myself, I've created so many stories that I now realize are just stories. They're not truths. They're not realism. They're not any of that. They're just stories I made up. And at any time, I can unlearn that stuff and tell myself a new story and create a whole new experience. And so, I think just trying to keep up with people or thinking that everyone's got their stuff together made me feel like I'm the only one that doesn't,
Hmm.
so I better figure this out. And the more I've kind of evolved, like, yes, evolved, but also like attracted more people into my life that have these experiences, that are open and willing to share, the more I realize that we're all very similar when it comes to that. And I think that's a freeing thing. I think that's a very authentic, organic, humbling thing to realize about each other, that will help us be able to tune into ourselves better,
Hmm.
and really find the importance of just that self-love and self-discovery. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I feel like it's almost like, like you said earlier, when you're younger, you're just trying to fit in. You're just trying to kind of find like what is your what makes you special. And you
mhm,
know it's almost like it's once you go through any trauma, adversity, or just life,
right,
and you that almost flips around, and you realize that the more that you notice how much you have in common with other people, the
yes,
more you discover yourself, instead of trying to discover yourself and trying to like push people a way to like make yourself be something. It's like
yeah,
almost the opposite. You learn that you can, when you connect with other people and you notice the similarities that we all have,
mhm,
um it almost is this, I've noticed for myself, it's almost like this, it's this, uh it calms you. It makes you feel like you're not trying so hard to like,
yeah, and it's empowering and
yeah.
freeing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. And like I'm sure your book is just such a resource for people in that place, like trying to discover themselves and like going through any trauma. Like, you know, what started, were you a writer before, when you, because you said you were on the floor and you kind of had that like
yeah,
aha moment of you need to write this book, but like had
right.
you written before that?
I had not read before that, and I
Okay.
had a lot of self-doubt about being able to write a book. And it's interesting too. I find when you're really like paying attention and tuning in, you can see how, like, what your gifts are, or what your interests are, um, along the way. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I remember growing up and thinking that I wanted to be like a children's book author, or I wanted to be an author. So if I ever watched a movie and it was about an author, something in my soul was like connected to that, wanting to learn more about that, wanting to, like, seeing myself in that. But then the self-doubt would kick in and be like, well, you're not an English major, you don't, you know nothing about writing a book, so how is that possible? And so that is a piece of what took me a while to get this book written. Part of it was that I had, it was really hard to write about it when I was in it. And it was even hard to write about it the first year after, because it was like PTSD every time I would
Yep.
think about it. It was very challenging. And then someone said to me, you know what? Just write, just start writing. I did journal the whole 3 years, but I didn't really even go back. That was just, I think, healing for me. But
Yeah.
I really just started from scratch when I was ready. And I just started writing. And I ended up having, one of my girlfriends is an editor, and we had such a great time going back over, what I wrote, and working on it together, and we added more. And I could see how it's so important for people, no matter what you're doing, to just trust in the process. It will
Yeah.
all work itself out we just have to get out of our own way of the self-doubt and all of the reasons not to do something. And so I did it. And it's like, I look at the book and I'm like, wow, like what? I wrote a
That
book, like,
it's a huge,
anyone
I
can
mean,
do it.
that's a huge accomplishment. Did it feel cathartic kind of when you were going through that, like, especially with a friend that was an editor, like
Yeah,
being able to kind of reprocess some of it?
absolutely. It was kind of twofold. For one, it was definitely um, a healing kind of modality for me to get through it. But also another part of why I wanted to write the book was because during that time, I didn't know about podcasts like you,
Mhm.
or, I was constantly listening to things because I
Yeah.
couldn't read or look at screens or anything, but I didn't know that there was this huge community out there of people. And in my mind, I wanted to create it. And so I, was thinking, gosh, there must be hundreds of millions of people who are just like me, who like life was going along just fine. And then all of a sudden something changed, whether it's a head injury or an illness or an accident or whatever it is. And my heart would really go out to those people. And I would want to, what can I do to help support people? What can I do to tell people that they're not alone? Because that's what I was experiencing, feeling, even when you have family and friends. And I'm so grateful for the people that came into my life and that were there for me. There's a loneliness, like you're
Oh,
stuck
yeah.
in your body, there's pain, there's all of these things, and it's lonely. And so I wanted to write a book to just help other people, whether it be the person who's going through it or the family members. And I have in my book, I have people, my family and some friends, and I had some nannies, I call them my nannies or caretakers during that time, and they wrote their version of how they experienced me in the book, which I think is, another
Wow.
way to help the families who are also struggling.
And
So
this is like, to me, when I met you, like, I was just a completely I was in shock because I connected so much having had a traumatic brain injury, but also that same drive that you have to help people have that resource to know they're not alone, because I had that exact same experience. And like, you'll even see if you were to read the caption of the reason I started the podcast was
mhm,
the tribe of people that came around me and the community, and how that was, I learned that was a huge part of my healing journey, was having that community and those resources.
right,
And when you're feeling alone in it and you don't have, like, I had gone to neurologists and neurologist was like, "Oh, you can lay in a dark room." And I'm like, um, like,
right,
that's not telling me how I'm gonna heal. Like, I
right,
guess long term you'll heal that way, but it's like I didn't have that opportunity to just lay in a dark room. So, like, having other resources and also people that have walked that journey, and knowing you're not alone, because that feeling of being stuck in your body is causes some of the worst anxiety and
uh,
PTSD. And I totally related to you when you said even walking through it, to write the book caused that, like, PTSD,
yeah,
because I've been there before, even sometimes doing the podcast or doing things with neuro wellness. It's like, oh, like hearing about someone else's story, or, just telling about the hard stuff that you've gone through. It's re-traumatizing, and you have to like kind of be aware of that, mindful of that, because you lived that, like, and
right,
not everybody understands that who hasn't had the traumatic brain injury. So I also think your book is probably a really good resource for people who haven't had a traumatic brain injury, but like you said, have a family member or a friend or somebody that did go through something. And maybe it's not traumatic brain injury, maybe it's some kind of form of, cancer or some kind of
yeah,
difficult
yeah,
uh illness.
absolutely. And I think that, well, I was going to say originally that I really truly believe that we all have a story and we all have a book in us, whether we write it or not. And I think that's part of our journey, is to be willing to share that with other people, because we really don't know who we will impact, who we will help. I had so many like strangers, just these angels, I call them my earth angels, come into my life during that time. And I don't have any contact with them anymore, but I will never forget them. And they hold, like, I have a very special place in my heart for them, because they showed up. It's like the universe just like sent me who and what I needed. And I think it's important that people know it's not always who you think it will be. And I write about that in my book. And, I'm very open and honest about that. But you got to, it's really important to let people be where they are, and to, give what they can give and not take it personally.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of healing through, whether you do therapy or what different resources you utilize to heal. I know trauma reprocessing has been helpful for me, and like part of that is recognizing that just as other people, when you were going through that, or I was going through traumatic brain injuries, they may take something personally how we acted. It's the same thing on the other end. Like
Right.
how other people act is not on us ever.
Right. 100%.
It's always what someone else is dealing with, and we mirror each other, kind of like that's how we work in this world. That's how humans relate to one another. But
Yeah.
like yeah, I mean, like, what were some do you wanna share do you mind sharing some of the resources that you had access to during, like, the different the different concussions that you went through, and even the worst one of them all?
Yeah. I mean, most of the resources would be at the after the fourth one, because that's the one that really just knocked
Took
me
you
down,
out.
and
Yeah.
I was debilitated. I really just couldn't function in life. I had horrible sensations rushing through me, like I couldn't participate in life. And so we went to all different doctors, from Eastern medicine to Western medicine. I mean, all over the board. And a variety of things. However, one of the things I didn't want my book to be was like a do it this way book and you will heal. And
Yeah.
what I've recognized for myself, and I write about it in my book, is that I really believe that if we're open to it and we ask for it, the right, resources and healers will come into your life. And that I recognize that my path is not necessarily the path for everyone. And that was important for me to realize, because I had so many people, and I know they were coming out of love, and they were like, try this, do this, go here, try do that. And it was like, there were too many chefs in the kitchen. It was way too overwhelming, especially for a brain that's, just been injured, and it's hard to process. It's hard to think straight. It's hard to make decisions. And so because of that, it made me realize, like, I'm not going to tell people what to do or who to go to. I am going to say ask, because I think we ask different people, we read about different things, we research it, and I think the perfect thing will come to us.
Yeah.
So, and I write a little bit about some resources in my book and the places that I went, and they certainly are wonderful options for people. But again, it's like anything. It's like you could have a great supplement and it works for one person and it doesn't work for
Doesn't
another
work for
person,
someone
right?
else. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So,
And I think that's really wise and humble of you, honestly, because I think oftentimes people think like this is the only thing,
mhm,
and I think it's nice to share resources, because sometimes people don't know that there are certain resources. They just never heard of them. Like I've had
mhm,
people tell me that multiple times with the resources that I've shared, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what is that? Like I've never heard it." And that might not be the specific thing that they need for their healing, but it's like an option for them. But like the way we come at it and share them versus like this is the only way and you need to
yes,
do, because we're complex beings, and like brain health and holistic health is all like connected, and every person is unique in those aspects, and what works for one person will not always work for another person. And like I mean, that's just like super humble of you to recognize, because I feel like there's also a lot of money in people trying to promote products and
right,
promote one,
right.
self-help, this is the way to do it kind of a thing. And
Yeah.
that's like refreshing to know that that's not
Well,
even your goal.
yeah. And I realized that along my journey. And so I just thought that I put a lot of like lessons learned for me in my book, and I hope that they will help other people and on their journey. But one of the lessons is that it's actually fun and rewarding and empowering to kind of find your path. It doesn't mean don't ask for help. I mean, that was another thing for me, that I never did ask for help, and I was able to learn
Yeah,
that skill during this time, that it's okay to get help from other people in all different ways. But just to kind of create your own journey is super empowering.
definitely. Part of what you did was create a book based off of um your story, and not, like you said, not really specifically telling people um exactly do this and you will heal or something like that, but just your journey and like what you went through and how that created this um kind of self-discovery. Can you
Mhm.
go a little more into like what some of that is without giving too much away, because I know people will want to read the book, but just kind of a summary kind of snapshot of what they're going to get to read about in your book?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted it to be something where people could relate, something that people could relate to. And again, like we were saying, not feel alone or not feel crazy or not feel, isolated and any of that kind of stuff. And so I share my story, and I really open up. I talk about some childhood traumas that I actually locked away and did not realize until this situation, which also I think was another thing the universe was like saying, at the time you block that out because of your age and what happened, but you need to know this about yourself in order to, move forward and be the best version of yourself type thing. So I actually unlocked something that I had locked away. And okay, so that I always get all these different thoughts that are coming to me.
Yeah, of
I'm gonna
course.
stay on track here. So there's that, there's my journey of just what I went through. There's the take from my family, like I said, and friends who are the caretakers, because I think the caretakers are also, this is their challenge in life. This is
Yeah.
and they deserve to have recognition and appreciation um, and some guidance and support as well. And then I go into the lessons learned. There's a section about lessons learned on my part, and you know, just information that I hope will help impact others as they continue their journey. In fact, there's another quote I absolutely love that kind of goes into the whole lessons plan, or the lessons learned section, which is by Wayne Dyer. And it goes, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that was so empowering for me, because it 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 just showed me, like, if you're standing in this vantage point and you only are looking from here, you will only see what is available to see from here. But if you walk around the mountain, or you walk around over here and you see, there's, oh wow, there's actually all of this going on. There's a
Yeah.
whole, right. And so it really helped me take a look at the things that I was struggling with and change my perspective on it. And when you do that, then you change your whole outlook. You change the way you feel about it, and it gives you some new ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like similar to what manifesting is, and also just how our brains work. We create neural pathways on the way that we think. It starts to create neural pathways, and like we can get stuck in that negative mindset because of trauma, repeated trauma, and all of that. And oftentimes people use trauma reprocessing and different therapies to kind of reprocess or decondition, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
would be the term that like some therapists use to get rid of, or not so much get rid of, but kind of your nervous system. We carry all these things, and like to let that go and then
Yeah.
be able to recondition. And reconditioning is really that new mindset, new way of thinking, and not, you know, I'm not, and Dr. Amen says this often, but I'm not a huge fan of, just like fluff. I call it fluffy thinking, like just be positive like all the
Yeah,
time because that's not realistic. And I think it's okay to be real and have like real fears and real thoughts and stuff, but the way that we, like you said, perceive the world and the way that we keep telling ourselves that things will be or look like or are, sometimes it does take a little bit of a perspective shift. Like basically what you're writing about with the wake up
yeah,
call is that finally you're like, the lesson I'm learning and all of these things that kind of came out of this negative experience actually was some ways positive because it created a whole new discovery of things and lessons that you were talking about. And so that I think is something really relatable, and I think it's something that we all struggle with when it comes to mindset and like how to not let our minds just take us away, like have that understanding that we can forge a new path by our mind and by the things that we continually think on, the way that we view the world, um, has a huge impact on
it does.
the way that we live our life.
Yeah, it really does. And some of my favorite mentors, the people that I would listen to, one being Wayne Dyer, Louise L. Hay, Abraham Hicks, like they all really, really come from this place that everything we need is within us,
Mhm.
and that it isn't so, it's like you said, it's important to say, like, to have the affirmations and to have the positive thinking, but that's not enough. We have to really feel those things. If you're
Yep.
saying something but your body's feeling the opposite, you're not really progressing or getting yourself to where you're wanting to be. And um a real empowering, I think, idea that I learned was, a lot of us are like, well, when this happens, then I'll be happy. But
Yep.
I've learned now that actually be happy, and then you'll see those things. Humans are, we're so programmed to, when I see it, feel it, touch it, have it in front of me, then they think that they're going to be happy. Well, first of all, that's not always the case. And second
No.
of all, we can create that happy feeling right here, right now. And that's really all we were seeking out anyway. So, you know what I mean? And so it's like,
Yeah.
I've learned how to do that, where it's like, and I'm certainly not perfect at it. And I certainly am very aware now of when I'm not doing it. So that
Yeah.
doesn't feel good. But at least I have tools, right? To go, okay, you're doing that again. But the reality is you can really just sit down, close your eyes, think of things that bring you joy, talk to yourself in a kind way, and your body will feel that. And
Yeah.
that right there is half the battle.
That's a huge thing because, like, even my coach and, like, my coaches, like, multiple, you know, high level, performance coaches and people, they will all say, if you can visualize it,
Yes.
you create that sensation. It's kind of like the somatic experience when you're in a session and you're processing something, you have to feel it to heal
Yeah.
it. People say that, but it's the same thing when it comes to, like you're saying, like to make something to make yourself feel happy, envisioning it. It doesn't have to be happening right now, but just
Yes.
envisioning that. And in it, that's where I think the whole manifesting thing comes from, is once you start feeling those things and creating that joy and happiness, those things happen because you are manifesting them basically. That's how
100%.
that's how that's how it works. Like
That's
it's
right. And so it's not about thinking our way there, it's about feeling our way there.
yeah,
Like you were saying before, when we're in that vibration, then we are creating those new pathways in our brain. And that's when all the magic is happening, when we're really in that high vibe place.
yeah.
We're not blocking anything from happening, from healing, from coming into our energy. That's
And
when it happens.
it's not just positive thinking, it's envisioning the things that make you happy so that you are creating that sensation in yourself, and then those things continue to happen. And
Yeah.
that, I think it's interesting because this leads us straight into the other question I was going to talk to you about, which is your affirmation cards, which I'm sure come came about as part of this like new mindset. So I would love you to tell us more about that, because that's another aspect of, you're an author and writer, and so you had that whole vision, and I think
Yeah.
that that's incredible as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes. So one of my resources during those 3 years were affirmation cards, and all the tarot cards. I was introduced to them through some of my friends, through some of my healers, coaches, therapists, all those kinds of things. And they were just very eye-opening and comforting to me. And so I thought, why not create my own set of cards? I really love to create poems. So like a lot of times for people's birthdays or like celebrations in our family, I'm the one to always like write a poem for people. And so I thought, hey, why not just make my own affirmation card deck? And I wanted to do something a little bit different than I've seen out there. And so this is my affirmation card deck. It's actually an affirmation and opportunity card deck. So basically what the cards are like, they have an affirmation poem on one side. I wanted to have a little ringy, thing that you could keep in your mind throughout the day, like a little jingle. And then on the other side, have an act of kindness that you can do for either yourself or for someone else. And so this one says, I appreciate all the beauty that nature has to share. The stronger our connection, the more I am aware. And these things, again, are all things in my life. Like I'm a huge nature person. When I'm out in nature, I feel it. It really lifts me up. It restores me. And so I thought, it'd be fun to include that. Then, and the act of kindness or opportunity on the back for this one is acknowledge the beauty of nature throughout the day. And I just think even simply taking a moment and looking out and watching the birds or staring at a beautiful flower or the trees and just like forget everything else for a few minutes and just tune into that in itself will really, it'll give you some good healing. Exactly.
I love that.
I thought it'd be fun. So I read that one, but let's just really pick one for today for everybody. So here's the, by the way, let me just say, one of my best friend's daughters is an artist, and I asked her if she would be the illustrator for these, and she just did such an amazing job. So they're extra special to me because they were made with love by Maddie.
They're beautiful and they're so colorful.
They're colorful.
They won't make me want to grab one and look at it.
Right. So let's see. This will just be for everyone for today, for Saturday. Okay. This one says, today is the first day of the rest of my life, so I make a fresh new start. I love, trust, and believe in myself from the bottom of my heart. And how perfect is that? Because we were just talking about believing in ourselves and putting ourselves first and self-discovery. That's no mistake, right?
And this is first podcast, so it's a new start.
Okay. I love it. I love how this all works out. Okay, our opportunity today. So hopefully everyone will take a few minutes to do this. Write out a wish list of the things that you want to have and places you want to go. And then watch how it all comes true.
Wow. I love these.
And then it says trust. And that has been a huge, huge word for me, is trust. I was looking at the picture too. So I was talking slowly because I was like, what did she put on this page for that? But anyways, yes, basically when we put out there what we want and we just get out of the way and we let it go, just watch how things come true. I did that during one of the cute things during my 3 years was my daughter, who was 9 at the time. She sat down with me and it was her idea. She's like, she wrote out all the things that I would want to do when I was feeling better. And I wish I would have kept that piece of paper because first of all, it was so cute. But second of all, I literally checked off all of those things.
Wow, that's incredible.
And it was amazing. And it was traveling and it was simple things like going to the movies. It was, car, it was all these different things and they've come true. And
it's things you probably take for granted when you're not dealing with something so hard. And then I've been through that. I actually went through that during my traumatic brain injuries and stuff, and just thinking like, wow, I took that for granted. Like the ability to just drive down the road or go, do something fun for yourself. And so it's a perspective shift. And then when you get to do it, you're like, wow, like you are almost living in the moment way more than you would normally for something that might not seem so huge. So
That's right. So yeah, so these are just a really fun way to start the day on a good note. There's a lot of different topics in here and things to just do for yourself, for other people. And it's when we talk about the affirmations and stuff, here's some for you right here.
It's
Start your day.
extremely uplifting. So if people want these, where do they get that? Your book, obviously,
Yeah.
and those affirmation cards.
Yeah. So the book and the affirmation cards are either on my website, joellekantor.com, which is
Yep.
JoelleKantor.com, or you could just look my name up on Amazon.
Mm.
And so that's what these both are. And then
Oh,
I also decided to do some fun children's books,
oh, I love it.
teaching children life. So I call it Life Skills of Max and Mowgli. Max and Mowgli are my real dogs.
Oh my
And
gosh.
this first book is actually real, like a real story. It's called To the Rescue. Both of my dogs were rescue dogs,
My
and just
gosh.
how we kind of how I found them and they came to be. And then in the back of the book, it actually shows like real life pictures of my family and the dogs. So it's really fun. I've been reading these to some elementary schools and the kids absolutely love them. And the other day they were like, "Are you going to write more books?" And so I said, "Do you want me to?" And they were like, "Yes."
I
So,
love this so much because one of my best friends is a fanatic when it comes to rescue dogs. She's part of the Humane Society
oh
and
yeah.
goes and rescues many dogs. And I've worked with children, many children in the past. So I just love this. Like, this
Yeah,
idea is incredible.
that was my thing too. I was a preschool teacher, a nanny. I had a
Yeah.
sports and movement program for kids. My passion's always been children. So I had to include that. And this is just, another great way to start with the younger kids in learning life lessons. So this is To the
Yeah.
Rescue. We've got Sharing is Caring. That's always a really important topic.
I
You
love it.
are what you eat.
They're
Um,
all with the dogs. I
they're all with the
love
dogs.
this.
This is all through the
I
dog
love this.
perspective. Yes. um Feelings and emotions, which obviously I had no coping skills when I was little with my feelings and emotions, so I
Of
thought
course.
that was an important one. And then finding your creativity.
Oh my
um
gosh,
another,
I love these.
another
I can't wait to get all of this. Like, all of these are just like, they're so empowering, and it's like a perspective shift too, because um the way that you come about this is unique and humble. And we all have our life stories. Like you said, that's something that I am going to quote you on, just the way that you said we all have a story to share. We just
Mhm.
might not have written it.
Yeah.
And I think that's super powerful, and all of this is really empowering towards how we can take the things that we've have happened in our lives, whether it's happened repeatedly and it's trying to teach us a lesson, or some we can learn lessons from anything in life. And it really is the way that what we learn from that, and how we grow to learn more about ourselves, like we've said. And like, um is there any dreams or aspirations, inspiration moving forward? I know you just said that you are probably going to write some more children's books, but kind of, is there anything else that you're working on right now?
Yes. So, um, back to the word patience. I have another book in me that comes after my wake up call, and I've had that title for a few years now, actually. But what I've come to realize is that I need more life experience to write that book. Like
Wow.
it's going to entail things that haven't even happened yet, and so I'm really excited about it. I keep like a really positive vibe with it, and I have a great feeling about it, but it's not quite time to write it. But that's going to be fun. And then I'm also just doing some life coaching. I know there's a lot of people out there with the life coaching, so I don't like that term actually, but I want to be of support to people. And I've been
Yeah.
working with people, whether you're, having a brain injury or you're having any kind of self-discovery situation or anything. I just really, from my lessons and and the people that I've worked with in my past, and then the things that I've been able to recreate for myself. I love helping people do the same for themselves. I think we all deserve that empowerment and that freedom and that passion in our lives, and
Hmm.
there's no time like the present to make it happen.
I mean, you're such an empowering individual, and I've seen this with people who've really gone through a lot in their life, a lot of adversity, and I think especially empathetic people, you become even more empathetic through that, and you have a lot. You're such a humble person, and you recognize that like not everybody's story is the same and has the same experience, and like I'm just blown away by getting to know you. I feel completely privileged to have you on this podcast and get to share about the book and affirmation cards and the children's books. And I'll put the link for all of these on when I share the podcast. So it'll be linked there so people can just click on it if they want to read it and purchase the books. And yeah, thank you so much for just being willing to be a part of this and share your story because resilience resourcing is the podcast all about overcoming adversity, reaching for your dreams. You've overcome a lot of adversity. You've reached for dreams that are you've accomplished incredible things. It's not just one book. You've written what, like 5 books, including the children's books, probably more, and the affirmation card. So, truly you're walking in this like continued desire to help others. And that's really what, now that resilience resourcing is part of neuro wellness community, it's a hub for resources so that people will know, educated, be connected, know that they're not alone. And, in the future, we're going to be doing more retreats. So would love to have you there with these books and sharing more because just connecting with incredible women and people like you, it just gives me goosebumps really to know that like this world we have a lot there's a lot of hope for
Yeah,
people moving forward. And sometimes it can feel bleak and you can feel alone, and connection is so 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 important to who we are as humans.
absolutely. And I would absolutely love to join you on those things. I was going to say earlier, like my favorite people are people who've had to go through struggles because it, like you say, it makes them humble. It makes them raw and vulnerable and real. It's
Yep.
just keeping it real, being authentic, being organic. And that's the kind of connection I think that everyone truly wants, is to really just get to know one another for who we truly are.
Yeah,
And yeah, I want nothing more for people to continue shining their light and experiencing life the way that they want to. So yeah, I would love to be there to help. I just want to tell you that, I'm so grateful that you came into my life, and you are such a beautiful soul. And it's wonderful that you've created this podcast for so many people. And I would imagine that you don't even know how many lives that you're impacting, but you are. And that's a very special gift. And so
wow.
thank you for doing this, and for wanting to support other people. It takes a village, so we're
It
all
truly
doing
does.
our part, right?
Thank you. I mean, that means the world to me, but honestly, that's my goal. And it's really to be a place where people like you who've also gone through so much of your own trauma, because I feel like when people learn about multiple different stories and different traumas, they can relate in one way or another and they won't feel alone. And like I feel like that's your goal with your books and with what you've done. And it's just such a I would love to partner and connect in the future just because it's so like
Sure,
intertwined,
we
like it's
will.
just perfect.
We for sure will. It's a date. You got it.
Yep.